Hi everyone, I'm María José García Perez. In today's presentation, I'm going to talk about behaviorism. What is behaviorism, the beginning, the theory, and the behaviorism in education. Let's move on in the first point. What is behaviorism? Behaviorism is a discipline based on the conception of habits. It suggests that learning and behavior are the result of stimulus response association. This theory can be objectively studied through observed action. Also, it researched in elements the situation prior to this human conductual. For example, emotional, sensory, motor, and emotional aspects, as properly as the prerequisites in which this interplays occurs, with the intention of being in a position to trade it if necessary. The story of behaviorism appears at the end of the 19th century when Ivan Pavlov, a Russian philologist, studied the digestive secretion of dogs. Pavlov is considered the father of classical conditioning. His contribution is stemmed from his research on psychology of digestion. During his test, he discovered that not only did feeding the animal's food or acid cause a saliva flow, but the experiments may represent who provide the food. Also cause a comparable flu. Although Pablo was not the first to notice this, he does appear to have been the first to hypnotize that a thorough examination of this phenomenon might shed light on how organisms adjust and adapt. Because he was able to grasp these responses, began to methodological research these reflexes, which he doubled conditional reflexes because they were influenced by or depend upon early occurrence in the life of the organism. The most important thing Pablo did was conducted experiments to show how conditional reflexes develop and how to get rid of them. There are three general aspects of Pavlov's work: dissertation. The first one is unlikely many other research before him. This one was not content to focus just on the obvious components of condition. Instead, he additionally demonstrated the generality of the phenomenon, the use of many stimuli, and pretty feed dogs. The second aspect was Pablo dedicated himself to the quantitative measurable factor of the phenomenon. Its measurable quantities such as diploma of elevation and the wide variety of prior reflexes. And finally, the third aspect of Pavlov's work was one its systematic nature by limiting his research to outcomes of several stipulations on a single quality. um, Pablo ensured that his experimental findings had been interrelated and consequently meaningful. The founder of actual term behaviorism was coined by John Watson when he published an essay in 1913 called Physiology as the Behaviorist Views. In this essay, he advocated the elimination of states of consciousness as proper objects of the investigation. George Washington did his early research with animals, particularly rats, running masses. He inverted the introspection transfer of notion of consciousness to, to animals by denying that the topic of consciousness is relevant even to the psychology of humans. John Watson was born on January 9, 1878 in South Carolina. With the assistance of his mother's professional connection, Watson was accepted to Furman University in South Carolina. His academic life turning around dramatically, and he graduated with a master's degree by the time he was 21. Next, he enrolled in a graduate program at the University of Chicago, where he studied psychology and began to develop his behaviorist theories. In 1903, Watson presented his dissertation at the University of Chicago and remained there was a research professor focusing on learning and sensory input in animals. Also in this year, earning his PhD in psychology. John Watson conducted several experiments exploring emotional learning in children. One of his famous and controversial experiments was the Little Albert experiment, which explored classical conditioning using a 9-month-old baby boy. In the experiment, Watson demonstrated that little Albert could be conditioned to fear something, in this case a wet rat, when no such fear existed initially. Watson combined a low nose with the appearance of the rat in order to create fear in the baby. The experiment was highly controversial and will likely be considered unethical by today's research standards. This experiment he was made together with his assistant named Rosalind Rainer. Then I have the theory of country behaviorism. This approach is about this behaviorism focuses on observed behavior. It objective is to achieve a certain behavior. Behaviorism believes that every effective stimulus with an answer corresponds, and that this is immediate. Behaviorism is primarily concerned with observable and measurable aspects of human behavior, and defining behaviorism learning theories emphasize change in behavior that result from stimulus responses, associations, and might divide the learner. Behavior is directed by stimuli, and an individual selects one response instead of an other because of peer conditioning and psychological drives exist and the moment of the action. Also, behaviorism is the theory that all behaviors are learned by interacting with the environment. This differs from other theories which state that behaviors are an innate part of biology. As a branch of psychology, it, it seeks to predict and control behavior. Also, it assumes that there is a difference between humans and other biological organisms and their ability to learn and respond to the environment. It wants to find the simplest explanation possible uh, rather than get conflicted uh, with many variables and complexities. The next one point is fundamental units of analysis. All psychological problems can be studied in terms of stimuli and responses. We have the letter S for stimulus and for a more complex situation, and R for and the letter R for responses, where where the small s and r are neural process related to the stimulus and the response. Laws relating s and r are to be expressed in terms of habit strength. Increases in habit strength are the result of the reinforcement of the response under appropriate conditions. As we can see in this example, there, there is a girl who has a stimulus, in this case of tickling, and it is represented by the letter S, and the girl has a response that is allowed. The response is represented by the letter R. To finish the theory, we have the conditioned or accurate reflexes. Um, Unconditioned reflex, also called an accurate reflex, is an automatic response to a stimulus that differs from that initial causing the response, but that was become associated with it by repetition in a process known as classical conditioning. Such a reflex is developed gradually by training in association with a specific repeat external stimuli. Um, One example of this is that in Russian psychologists Ivan Pavlov experiments in which a dog salivates at the raining of a belief over a period of time. Every finding is processed by the bell ringing stimulus. Such a reflex is built into the nervous system and doesn't need to intervention of conscience to take effect. The study of this phenomenon might help to understand the adjusting and adaptive behaviors of organisms. The last point is behaviorism in education. Behaviorism and current classroom. Every teacher knows that they will usually have a student in class who is difficult to manage and work with. Their behavior is usually hard to control, and it can be extra work to get them to pay attention and start distracting others. Behaviorism, or the behavioral learning theory, is a popular concept that focuses on how students learn. Behaviorism focuses on the idea that all behaviors are learned through interaction with the environment. This learning theory states that behaviors are learned from the environment and says that innate or innate factors have very little influence on behavior. This theory is the key in understanding how to motivate and help students. The information is transferred from teachers to learners from a response to the right stimulus. The students are a passive participant in behavioral learning. The teachers use behaviorism to show students how they should react and respond to certain stimuli. This needs to be done in a repetitive way to regularly remind students what behavior a teacher is looking for example, to memorize and do repetitive tasks in order to improve their grades. Then we have the ideas to implement in the classroom. The first one is quick feedback. Feedback improves learning confidence, motivation to learn, and ultimated a learner's attainment. The more effective it will be shaping the students for success. The second one is the reward revision. For a student, revision isn't fun, but if you introduce a reward system that prizes students for doing a certain amount of revision with some kind of incentive, you can begin to create a possessive association. And finally, start of lesson routine. Almost all teachers have a start of lessons routine, and it's a prime example of conditioning. Over time, students learn to come into the classroom and either sit down and await instruction or begin working on attacks on the board. Then we have the implications. It isn't because a student is engagement congruent and working that he learns. There isn't proof that students understand the information that are dealt with, and the learning process is believed to be much more internalized than behaviorists thought. Finally, we have the conclusion. Behavior could work when we are trying to create a learning mindset among our students by giving feedback regarding good behavior and using routines. Teachers create habits in students and their learning. Professors take charge of the classroom. Doing too much tasks could put students off doing their work. And that's it. Thank you.